we use this term like, love, and then live it. Do you like it? Do you love it? And then, or do you live it, right? And living it is a completely different thing than even loving it, because you might love it, but you really don't work at it.
Wow.
And living it is a whole nother thing, right? So if you live it, what does that mean? Living it means that I'm willing to get up every day to go to class because I know that's an important part. Otherwise, I don't play. I'm willing to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get in the weight room before class and get my lift on, go to class, come back, and then get up 300 shots in the off season, right? I'm willing to do everything I need to do, work on my ball handling, whatever it might be, but I got to get in the gym and live it, right? Not just love it.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by the assistant men's basketball coach at Collin College, Rick Whitmer. As a player, Coach Whitmer was All-State for 2 years at San Jose City College. At Vanguard University, he was an All-American and Player of the Year in the GSAC. Coach Whitmer was a varsity assistant for 4 years at Santa Clara High School and helped them to win 2 league titles. He spent 15 years in the AAU circuit with Texas Elite. After 3 years as an assistant coach at Prestonwood Christian Academy in Plano, Texas, he became an assistant coach at Collin College. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
There it is.
What's up, Coach?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing, man? Good to see your face.
You too, man. You too. I'm doing awesome here. I can't complain. What about you?
Doing great, man. Just we're in full-blown recruiting mode right now, so we're trying to get some guys signed, and we're bringing some guys in from out of state. So it's a super busy time. So
how is that different for you guys? I mean, I was just today reading an article by Frank Martin at UMass talking about just how different the landscape is now with the portal. With he mentioned that like since the season's been done, 6 of his players have entered the portal, and so it's just like almost rebuilding a brand new team every year at Collin College. How have you guys felt or dealt with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the same, we're feeling it just like I think the big D1 programs feel it, right? Where I'll give you a great example. I just brought a kid in yesterday, really good player, he's a big kid, 6'7", 6'8", can spray it like crazy, can really shoot it. And he came in, he had a little bit of an injury, and he came in yesterday and played really well, recovering from an injury, but we wouldn't have had, with all the things that are going on with the portal and all this, we probably never would have had a shot at this guy. But because he was injured and because of the portal, coaches are just waiting, right? They're waiting for situations to unfold before they sign kids. We brought this kid in yesterday, and, we were like, wow, this kid's a pretty good player. Probably wouldn't have had a shot at this guy, 2-3 years ago before COVID and the portal and all those things. But yeah, we're feeling the effects, and we're even kind of waiting and kind of seeing, right? Kids entering the portal saying, well, we got this one local kid, we like him, but we kind of want to wait and see because we got 2 or 3 portal guys coming in to do a workout. So yeah, it's changed everything. It really has. And I really feel bad for the high school guys sometimes, because the high school guys are really the ones that are getting stung right now, because they're the kind of the last of the of the options, if you will, for some of the coaches, right? They're looking at D1 transfers, D2 and NAIA players of the years. Those guys are getting looks from the Big 12 schools now, and then the JUCO guys, and then you got international guys, and then you got high school guys. So it's unfortunate for some of the high school players, really good players. They're going to have to probably settle on things at a lower level than they thought they should be at. So,
I mean, I don't know if the portal's going anywhere, but just the number of players that are in there, and obviously the extra number of players still in college basketball. How far away do you think we are from maybe some feeling of normalcy?
That's a great question. We were just talking about that the other day as a staff, because we kind of did the end of year kind of get together. It's like, I don't know. It's a great question. It could be a year, it could be 2 more years, 3 more years, not sure. But because now you're dealing with a lot of the fifth year seniors too, because they got that extra COVID year. So
Yep.
this coming year makes it difficult because you got those fifth year guys, right? Because they got that COVID year back. And so, yeah, maybe it could be a couple years, 2 or 3 years, but yeah, hopefully it gets back to some normalcy. But to your point, coach, there's so many guys in the portal, right? It's like for guys like us, it's a good thing because we see a lot of these, freshman D1 bounce backs that we
Yeah.
might be able to get a hold of. But yeah, it's going to be a while, I think.
To me, it seems like what a great opportunity for guys that do show loyalty to the place where they are. Like, let's just say I'm an average player at a big time school. I should, in my mind, if I like the school, if I have good friends, if I like the coaching staff, I should stay put, because there's a good chance that a lot of these guys that I'm competing against right now, they're going to make a choice to go somewhere else. And so, I mean, even though maybe guys coming in have an advantage of levels that they've played, I think a bigger advantage is actually knowing the system, knowing the coaching staff, having time under your belt with them. That might be a huge advantage for guys to stick around.
I couldn't agree with you more, coach. And you're a guy speaking from wisdom, right? You're still a young guy. I'm an old dusty guy, but I'll tell you, I couldn't agree with you more because I think it's kind of that old adage of the grass is greener on the other side. I think some of these young guys think, well, if I didn't play as a freshman, so I'm upset. Yeah, kids don't understand how hard it is as a freshman, especially when you're at the Division I, Division II level.
Yep.
It's the difference of an 18-year-old young man playing against 22 and sometimes 23-year-old grown men, right? That transition is extremely difficult just from a physicality standpoint, knowing how to play the game. And freshmen get so impatient sometimes that, well, I didn't play much as a freshman, and they want to bounce, right? They want to leave and go to a different program. Well, I think to your point, right? It's such an advantage to stay. You know the system, you know the offensive and defensive schemes. Why not stay and take advantage, right? As long as you're still wanted in that program. I just would love to see kids have a little bit more stick-to-itiveness and stay with their program versus just jumping ship.
And we're not talking about, and that's what another thing Frank Martin said, is that we're not talking about people leaving a bad situation. If you happen to be with a coach that's verbally abusive, that's just not like, it's a negative, it's a toxic culture. Like, this is all based on fear. I think those are more and more rare, especially, I mean, maybe what this does too is it forces, if there was anybody resistant to thinking about culture, or that culture is not that important, this is probably going to change them a ton. Like, people need to go to your school and stay in your program because they see the value in it and the positive atmosphere. But if now, and Frank Martin said, people are leaving great situations, there's nothing wrong, and they're making changes. So go back to our original point is, people say now that playing hard is a skill, effort is a skill. Not everybody has it. So if you can do that, that makes you unique. I think now maybe loyalty may be a skill. And if you can stay and remain when the feeling is to, like you said, maybe the grass is greener, you might be able to make yourself more valuable and stand out more just by sticking around.
No, I agree. I think, part of it is, I think it's a different generation too, where I think a lot of these players some of them are so good, so young, right? They get coddled a little bit from their junior high to high school programs to their AAU programs, and they never really go through a bunch of adversity. And then they all of a sudden get to college and they realize, wow, everybody in here can really hoop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
These guys are all really good. And then all of a sudden you're sitting and it's a culture shock. Like, wow, I've never had to sit, right? And so I think kids get impatient. And it's just, I think, part of kind of where things are. I hope at some point it reverts back to where kids just stick, and they just, when you get into, like you said, you get into a great situation, good culture, good men running the program.
You feel like you're improving. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And they just stay, I just love to see, because you see the kind of, there are some programs that kind of have that culture built. And what you're seeing, like as an example in the NCAA tournament, you're seeing some of these schools beat these bigger schools because they have guys that have been there 4 or 5 years. They play together. They understand how to play. They're certainly not the more talented team, but because they stuck together and they kind of grew up in a culture of this is how we're going to play. They're beating the Kentuckys of the world. They're
Yeah.
beating the Texas Techs of the world, right? So you just kind of can see it in the evolution of what's going on in college basketball. It's kind of fun, right?
No
So it makes
doubt.
March Madness so exciting, right? Because you got these schools that you think, well, there's no way these guys are going to win, and
Yeah.
boom, they beat these guys because they got seniors and juniors that have been there a while, you know.
Well, man, I want to thank you so much for giving up your time coming on talking hoops with me. I've always enjoyed our friendship back from the McKinney days, getting to know you and your sons. I've always appreciated the love and passion that you have for the game. And I knew that you were a great player when you played, and then it's been so cool to now see you. You've had so much coaching experience, especially in the select world, then at Prestonwood, and now getting to kind of live out your dream at Collin College. So, man, thank you so much for doing this.
Coach, it's a pleasure to be on your show. I've always been enamored with you. I saw you doing workouts early on in the McKinney days, and I said, man, that guy's going to be a heck of a coach one day. So I've always respected you too, man. So when I had the opportunity to do this for you and with you, I'm jumping all over that. So thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
You've been able to be around some great coaches and great programs, from McKinney with your involvement there, just in with Wes Watson, who, and we both know, like, he's one of my favorites and I think one of the best around. Then he got to go to Prestonwood and work with another one of my favorites, Jeff Clarkson. Now Coach Sagona, like at Collin College. I mean, you've seen it, and I imagine that all of those programs have great cultures. How does culture drive performance?
Yeah, I think it's super important, right? It's you know, a great example, like with Jeff Clarkson. He's one of my favorite guys on the planet, right? I mean, honestly, that guy. One, he's a great coach. More importantly, he's a great man,
Yeah.
right? And his culture. I was blessed enough to spend 4 years coaching with him at Prestonwood, and man, I got to tell you, I learned so much from Coach Clarkson, just how to go about the blocking and tackling of every day, right?
Yeah.
Like, the process in which he goes through, the culture in which he built with, the expectations of the players, the parents, right?
Yeah.
Because even the parent, it's important for the parents, but more importantly, just preparing those guys not only for basketball, but to be great young men in their communities, right? Jeff just did an incredible job of putting his arms around his players, kind of leading them down the right path, right? And then really working hard, right? And working hard at it. And the culture that he built was that, we're going to grind, right? We're going to grind. We're going to go to practice every day. And it's going to be, we're going to go hard every day. And then, there's expectations that you got to do these certain things to be successful, right? And it's not just about that day in practice. It's about getting extra shots up. It's about getting in the weight room. It's about nutrition, all those things, right? And I got to watch that for 4 years with Jeff, and it was incredible, right? And so I was just so lucky to be a part of his program, and kind of watching him go about how he does it. And Jeff, he's just one of the best guys out there, right?
Yep.
And I miss him. One, if it really wasn't for the Collin opportunity, because JUCO is really where I wanted to be, I would have been with him for the next 15 years, because I just love him as a person, but I love how he went about running his program. And you can see it in the players, you can see it with the administration, and just everybody understands and gets what he's doing. So I think culture is a huge part, of running a successful program, right? And it starts at the top with your head coach. So,
you had an interesting experience with being on, even though you've been doing AAU for a long time, and I'm not diminishing that at all. Like, that's a challenge. And you're coaching games. You have practices where sometimes you have guys in and out, like hard to get everybody there. But school ball is different in the fact that you don't practice as much. And you get to be around those players a little bit more, and you do play maybe not more games, but golly, I always tell our guys, there's nothing like district play, and there's nothing like playoffs, and just the meaning behind each of those games. So you've been able to see that process as a parent with your sons, but then what was it like moving from that role to, in school ball, especially being an assistant coach? Was there like an oh wow, like maybe I didn't understand all that it takes, or higher appreciation with how parents can be? Like, what was that change like for you?
Coach, that's such a great question. And it really hits home with me because I really did see, like, I had one perception of being an AAU guy for all those years, right? Because it's just, it is what it is, right? And
Yeah.
going into high school and then going through like my first season and then even my second and third, it was like night and day.
Hmm.
I can honestly tell you that. It was because I had one expectation, and when I got there and realized it's totally different, right? When you talk about district play, like I'll give you an example. Like we get to district play, Bishop Lynch knew every set. They knew every call, they knew every set. And you're kind of rolling along through the season, running your certain things, running horns, running five out, all these things, and it's working. And all of a sudden, you get to district play, and it's different, right?
Yeah.
They're able to get stops on you because they know what's coming, and the preparation of some of these schools in conference play is just at another level, and that's the stuff you do not see in AAU, right? It's because you're just playing, right? You're
I mean, in
trying to
some
be
sense, it's a little more pure because it's just your five versus their five. We're just going to see who's better, who's better at
true.
what we do. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I agree with you. And so there is some pureness to that too, right? But at the end of the day, it's what I found it was just more difficult, right? To run sets, get scores when you need them, and then just to prepare to be prepared on our end, right? We spent in district play just so much more time really truly understanding what they're running, and we're doing the same thing they are, right? We know their
Yeah.
calls, we know their sets, and it's just like, okay, everybody knows what you're doing, but now who's going to run it better, who's going to do the little things that make each set work better, right? And that's what those games boil down to. They usually boil down to 5 or 6 possessions because you did them better than the other guys, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great question, and the differences to me night and day, right? So I do have a much greater appreciation for high school coaches now because of what they go through the season, and I lived it for 4 years with Jeff, and it was just a different deal.
I think it's so cool though that you got to do both, and got to experience both because I think part of maybe my frustration at times over the years is it's not the parents' fault that there's a disconnect, that they don't really, because not every parent's like you, played at a high level where you're a great player, you love the game, you're all in it, you're doing select stuff on your own. Like, I mean, if anybody had a right to sit there and say, like, okay, maybe I don't understand why or what we're doing, like it's someone like you, and not that you did that, but then my goal now is like to try to bridge that gap more and more with parents. And maybe being at a private school where, they pay to be here. They don't pay to play basketball here, but they pay to go to school here. They have a little bit more, not a say in what we do, but if they want to know why, I feel like they have a legitimate reason for asking that. And I don't think it's bad, even at a public school, or if parents want to know why some things, that we open that door and we have that conversation. But I'm telling you, I think I've always told parents that I will never know your son better than you do. For me to say that I know him just like that is just stupid. I didn't raise him. I haven't been around him. But as a basketball player, and now from just the amount of time we get to spend with them throughout the week, the hours, the minutes, and then you put that on top of weeks and months together, let alone off season and things like that, I start to get a pretty good idea of the basketball player that he is, maybe even the competitor that he is. And I think that's sometimes where there's a disconnect of that, the idea that as coaches, we don't know our players, that, well, golly, we see them all the time. And I want to help bridge that gap with them a little bit.
Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, like I said, it's just a totally different experience from the AAU thing to the high school thing, and now I'm coaching in college, and it's just a whole nother level, right?
Oh, man.
It's which I really do appreciate, but I'm glad I kind of went through that transition because, like you said, I have a much greater appreciation now for what high school coaches go through because honestly, I really didn't understand. Honestly, I was kind of blind to it, right? I was a player. And then I got into AAU and I did that for a long time. And I just kind of thought, oh, that's how it is. Well, it's a totally different deal. Right.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate what you guys go through because it is a grind, right? It's a total grind. And there's so much to it, so much more than in a summer setting. Right. And it's just, and I watch guys like you who run successful programs. And I really appreciate what you guys do because it's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. What's that transition that now been like from high school with like at Prestonwood to Collin College, which, I mean, talk about successful programs and what that year out, year in, like have just incredible cultures. What's been your biggest takeaways from differences with that jump?
Yeah, well, one, it's the talent level, right? I mean, there's just incredible levels of talent. I mean, Division I JUCO basketball is the real deal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of talent, and so that's the first piece. But I think the second piece is, this was the big eye opener for me, right? When Coach Sagona had an opening and I interviewed for it and he hired me, the biggest jump for me was the level of intensity, right? Like at 4 years at Prestonwood, the kids play hard, practice every day. But there's like a second gear and a third gear in JUCO. And I knew it was weird. So Sagona hired me, at the beginning of the summer last year. So we were kind of messing with the guys that were there the year before. And I knew I wouldn't be coaching a lot of these guys, but we had open gyms and I'd show up to these open gyms just to kind of get myself inserted, right? And coach, just the open gyms were nuts, right? They were killing each other it was like they were playing in a NCAA championship game. I mean, they were just going at each other, right? And I'm like, okay, I did 2 years of JUCO before I went off and played it the 4 year. And I remember what that was like, but I'd kind of forgotten, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get in there in the summer and I see all of a sudden, man, you can tell some of these guys are playing to get out of a situation, right? They're trying to play to get to the next level, get a scholarship and change their lives. And you can feel it. And I could feel it in open gym. And I'm going, man, these guys are really going at each other. So although high school has a certain level of intensity, as you go up to the next level, it's a whole, as you know, right? You played at Baylor. You were a fantastic player. That level of intensity, right? It's like, even in an open gym, these guys are wanting to win every single game and they're super competitive. And so that was the biggest jump for me. And then just from an accountability standpoint, right? It's like, and I love this about Coach Sagona. So I'm going to brag on his program a little bit. He's been doing it 36 years, but he doesn't take, and I hate to say this, but in JUCO, sometimes you get this perception of a bunch of knuckleheads, right? Sometimes you get these knuckleheads that come to JUCO, right? And that's not the case, but sometimes people perceive that. And you do get them from time to time. Well, he doesn't take any of those guys. So he's very selective of who he takes. And the accountability piece was, to me, is what really sticks out too, because he's trying to recruit really good young men. And we don't want to go chasing guys to have to go to class and get grades and stuff like that. He's recruiting kids that are stand-up kids that want to, we use this term like, love, and then live it. Do you like it? Do you love it? And then, or do you live it, right? And living it is a completely different thing than even loving it, because you might love it, but you really don't work at it.
Wow.
And living it is a whole nother thing, right? So if you live it, what does that mean? Living it means that I'm willing to get up every day to go to class because I know that's an important part. Otherwise, I don't play. I'm willing to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get in the weight room before class and get my lift on, go to class, come back, and then get up 300 shots in the off season, right? I'm willing to do everything I need to do, work on my ball handling, whatever it might be, but I got to get in the gym and live it, right? Not just love it. Because I'll be honest with you, we got some guys on our team right now that we brought in as freshmen that say they love it, and they probably do, but they're really not living it, right? They're more interested in doing Xbox, or they're more interested in hanging out with their girlfriend, right? Well, look, you got a short window in JUCO of 2 years, sometimes one, but 2 years. Well, what am I going to do to leverage that and take advantage of that, right? Am I going to sit around and do nothing, but I do love basketball, or am I going to live it and grind for the next 2 years so I solidify my position to get that next scholarship and change my life, right? Those are the kind of guys that Sagona tries to bring in. And so I really do appreciate that, right? So that's that's something that we're trying to find in every player that we're recruiting right now as we're sitting here talking, right?
Yeah.
We're in full recruiting mode. So anyway, that's kind of how I see it. And those are the real eye openers for me.
Man, what a great idea there. Like that's a mind shift. Because I've got a Grapevine Faith Christian School. I've got a lot of guys that like basketball. And you know what? That's okay. Like here, that's enough. Yeah, because sometimes kids, I joke around and say, like, because some of my coaching buddies will say, yeah, we had a 6'5" guy who's interested in coming to play. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great. I had a kid interested, but he didn't know if he wanted to do band or if he wanted to be in theater or basketball. Like that's he's choosing between those. And I'm like, okay, well, theater's probably great. But we got a lot of guys that like it, and then sometimes we have some dudes that love it. Like they're willing to put in some extra time. Like I would say, my stepson, he's going to be a junior next year. He's kind of in that. Like he loves it. Living it though, it is a total shift of your priorities, of your time, what you think about, and the level of distractions that you have. I mean, you really start to become jealous with those minutes that you have every day, and you start to think about things differently. Like I always tell our guys, like, you worked hard today, but just remember, there's someone else doing more. I mean, that has to be in the front of your mind, that someone else doing more. But I think the challenge for me then, Coach, is like what you were talking about in that open gym with those guys that every possession they're really playing for something, that desperation. How do I take that feeling and try to translate that and get my guys at Grapevine Faith Christian School to do that? I mean, that's my question to you.
Yeah,
for the time that I have them, how do I get them to be trained like that, play like that?
Yeah, I think it boils down to goals, right? Personal goals. Like what is your personal goal, right? Like, because I asked that question to a lot of our guys, right? Because even though they're in JUCO, I always start with, well, what are your goals? What do you want out of basketball, right? And you get pretty much the standard answer in JUCO because they're all shooting for that next ride, right? We're on scholarship now, but they gotta earn the next one, right? So I would say, the one thing is start with goals with your guys and say, hey, what is it that you want out of basketball? And to your point, right? Not every kid at your level in high school is going to play in college. Playing in high school is great. It's a great experience. So how do we take advantage of that? But while you're here, what is your goal? Like, do you want to be an all academic guy? Do you want to be an all conference player? Right? Do you just want to come off I mean, what are your goals with it? And if they're always going to shoot for the highest level they can, I would assume, but then start with that. And really
I'd really like to ride the bench, and I'd like to never really contribute at all. Yeah, right. You don't get that. You don't get that answer a lot.
I want to pass water bottles out.
Yeah, right? But what you're talking about is it really boils down to relationships with your players. Like, in order for you to know the goals that they have, you got to have a relationship with them, which means you have to have spent time with them one-on-one outside of the lines, where at that point you don't have a moment in practice. Hey, let's just stand here and talk about your goals. You have to make a priority to have that time with your players.
100%. Yeah, I agree. And I think, once you get the goals from the guys, then you can almost reverse engineer their activity to reach those goals, right?
That's good.
Okay, so if you say you want to be an all conference player, well, let's reverse engineer that. What does that take to get to that point, right? Hey, are you getting up 300 shots a day? You're not? Okay, well, then you're not really being genuine about your goals, right? You're saying you want to do X, but you're not willing to put in the work to do that, right? And maybe one good way is, we don't do this, but I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe one good way is to write those things down. So as you meet with your players at the beginning of the year and you say, what are your goals? You document those things and say you want to be X. Okay, well, we're going to document what it takes to reverse engineer that to say, this is how we get to that point, right? Now you have something in writing with your player that says, hey, I'm thinking out loud. I'm thinking this is what I should be doing with my guys, right?
Well, yeah, I think you're talking about that. That's next level coaching. I think a lot of coaches will ask players, what are your goals? And when they say, oh, like as a junior, they say, well, next year I want to be a starter and I want to do this and that. I think a lot of coaches will ask those questions and say, oh, that's great. Let's go. I'm behind you. I believe in you.
Yeah.
That's okay. but like the whole idea behind Josh Medcalf's book, Burn Your Goals, is the goal by itself isn't enough. The goal without a plan is a wish. Like, I think a lot of players are just wishing. Like, you have that goal, and I love that term, reverse engineer that. Okay, what are the steps that we have to take? Now that we have those steps down, forget that. Let's focus on this part. Let's focus on the steps. And here's the idea is, player Johnny, is that you can't skip these steps. If you skip these steps, what you say you want won't happen. And so then you get them past the point of just saying something and wishing it, but actually giving them action steps where you and I both know talk is cheap. Like, you can tell me you want this, but how do you spend your Saturdays? Like, tell me what you did on Saturday. Well, I slept until noon, and then I got up and I had a Pop-Tart, and then I played video games till 4, and then I went and played a little ping pong with my, like, okay, sorry. Like, so anyway.
Well, I tell you a story real quick?
Yes.
Because I think it really hits home to what you're saying. It's about the work, right? It's about reverse engineering your goals. So without naming names, I don't want to put one of my players on this, but we had a guard on our team. Okay, high school, super successful high school team, almost won a state title, 6A here locally. Great player, comes to our program. Okay, never sat, played all the minutes at his high school team, but all of a sudden now he's playing behind a third year sophomore that we've had, got the COVID year back, talking about an 18-year-old playing against a 21-year-old. Okay.
Yeah.
So now he's coming off the bench, never had to face that adversity in his life. Well, beginning of the year, he played okay. And then he hit a kind of a roadblock at about the middle of the year and wasn't playing well, wasn't shooting it well, was turning the ball over. And we had to sit him a little bit, right? But the one thing about this kid, and this is what I love about this kid, he had a process. He knew what his goals were every day. He was going to get 300 shots up a day. He was a gym rat, and he lived it, coach. He lived it. And he was in that gym. He was working and working and working. And he had a mental breakdown one day. I had to spend 45 minutes sitting with him in the locker room, talking to him, and basically told him, man, we believe in you. And he kept grinding, even though he was frustrated and upset, but he stuck to his process, right? He stuck to the getting the shots up, getting his workouts in. Coach, by about 3/4 of the way through the season, we couldn't take him off the floor. And that is so satisfying to watch a young man go through that adversity, stick with his process, and get to the point of the season where he was playing so well, we couldn't get him off the floor. And by the end of the season, he was one of our better guys, right? And so it was just so great to watch a young man go through that. And that's, to me, is really what it's all about, right? And so this kid's living it, right? He's living it. And I just love him for it. He's one of my favorite kids I've ever coached. He's just an incredible young man.
And I love getting to hear that from a college coach, because I think sometimes the perception is that there is some business to college athletics, but there's still I recruited you. We brought you in because we believe in you. Things aren't going perfect, but we're behind you. Here's the step-by-step process. And then working with that player with the ups and downs, and then celebrating and finding that joy when you see him be successful. I just think that's important for people to know, like, that does happen in college athletics. It is not, hey, we brought you in, you're not doing your job, sit there, shut your mouth, we're going to actually recruit over you anyway. This is a relationship business or game still. And I think that story shows it right there.
I agree with you, Coach. It's all about relationships, man. It's sometimes not even about basketball. You get guys in your program, they can all play, but at the end of the day, it's about these young men. I use the term with my guys all the time. It's 100-year relationships, right? This is what these are, and I want to go to these guys' weddings, right? I want to be there when their kids are born. And that's the goal, man. And so to watch guys like that go through what he went through this year, I'm just so proud of that young man. I couldn't even tell you. He's just a great guy. And that's what it's about, Coach. It's about, making these guys the best players it can be, but also these relationships. And that's what's going to carry for a lot longer than basketball. Right. So,
coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. I'd love to know what you thought about the recruiting process, because at Prestonwood, you had a ton of players that you were guiding through this process. But on that end, what's it been like for you now on the process of you're trying to find players? I mean, we talked about the portal early on. Has the recruiting process been what you thought? Is it enjoyable, or is it like just different than you ever dreamt? Because I have an idea as a former player, but never having done as a coach, of something that personally I don't want to get near or touch, but how's that been for you?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy it. Like it's one of the areas I really love, just, trying to sell our program to these young men. It's hard though, because, at Collin, as Region 5, if you ask most Division 1, Division 2 NCAA coaches, what's one of the best JUCO conferences in the country, they're going to tell you Region 5. So Region 5 is super competitive, and it's hard to get, really, really good players sometimes. And so when you got to be, as Sagona will say, we're looking for pros, guys, guys that kind of flew under the radar, but they're going to be pros one day. I mean, that's the kind of level of guy we're trying to find. It's really, really hard. So what I found is, as you get on the phone, you start calling these guys and trying to sell the program. They're talking to every other JUCO out there. They're talking to D2s, D1s. And so we're really trying to get Division 1 guys that either, flew under the radar, or just for whatever reason didn't get recruited. We're trying to find those guys, and it's really, really difficult. Right. So that's where you end up waiting for portal guys and things like that. So it becomes very difficult. But I really do enjoy that part of the process. But it is, to your point, Coach, I thought it would be a little easier. It's hard, man. It's very competitive, right? Because now the one thing I think, Collin has a pretty distinct advantage. And I think this is one of the things I always try to sell with players is, one, our coach has been there a very, very long time. Sagona's been there 36 years. So that's a huge advantage for a guy coming to a JUCO, because he has relationships, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just a few short years ago, they had a kid named Taz Sherman. I wasn't there, but Taz Sherman played for Collin. We ended up going to West Virginia and played for Bob Huggins, and he was the number 2 scorer in the Big 12 last year. So, and he's a pro now. He's making a bunch of money overseas. Those are the kind of guys we're trying to get, and it's just really, really hard. So the fact that Sagona's been there a long time, he has relationships with a lot of big schools out there. So that's a big selling point for us. The other thing for us is, our facilities are really good. We have a great apartment living situation where kids get their own, bedroom, which is very unique in a JUCO environment, right? Most JUCOs, you got 2 or 3 guys sleeping in the same room. They get their own bedrooms, but also the facility, the dining commons, the weight room is all right there. So no excuses, right? If you want to become a better player, you've got all the resources to become that player if you're just willing to put in the work. So that's one of the things we try to sell as a program thing, but it is hard, man. It's not easy, getting kids to commit. And so we go through a pretty rigorous process. One of the things we do make sure we do is we talk to their AAU coaches, right? We talk to their high school coaches. We try to talk to people that know them, maybe like a third party guy that doesn't really know, but he's seen them play a lot. We do a lot of checks and balances to make sure we're bringing in the right kind of guys. So, but it is very difficult.
You made a comment, guys that fly under the radar. So back when you and I played, one, no social media. Select basketball was different. I mean, truly, guys were selected off of high school teams to go play, and maybe 1 or 2, maybe. And there just weren't that many teams. Coach, how nowadays with all of the ranking services, with social media, with Huddle, all these, how do guys still fly under the radar or just somehow get missed? Because you hear the quote, if you can play, they'll find you. Right. And I do believe in that, but then we see guys all the time that just for whatever reason just get missed. How does that still happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. Sagona and I talk about this all the time. You know, it's funny because these guys will come out with these rankings, right? This guy's a top 50 player in DFW. Is he? I don't know. He might be, but
is he? I don't know.
I don't know. Shoot, maybe. And then you watch him play, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
That guy at number 10 point guard. I don't know. So what I'm trying to say is like we'll look at a kid and he might be ranked top 50. Great. But the reality is we want to put our eyes on him, right? Because there's nothing like putting your eyes on a kid. So we don't really put a lot of weight into like the ranking system and all that stuff because, you know, there's a kid I coached years ago. He wasn't on anybody's boards. Right here in McKinney, right? He ended up, wasn't recruited. He had to go the JUCO route. Ended up playing at Idaho State and having 2 great years and was second team All Big Sky, and dropped 30 on Damon Lillard when they were 10-0. Right?
Nice.
So that kid, ultimate guy that flew under the radar, right? There's a lot of great players out there that maybe didn't hit the ranking boards, and so when we see that, we don't put a lot of weight in those rankings. Sometimes they're legitimate, but sometimes there's kids you're just like, man, I just saw this kid play who's not ranked, and he should be on that list. So it's a hit or miss thing, but we just love to put our eyes on kids. So what we try to do is either obviously go out and see them play, but we like to bring them in too, and like sometimes play with our guys because our guys are playing at a whole nother level, right? Again, the competitiveness. You know, we just brought a kid in yesterday. We want to see how they compete with our guys, and so that's the ultimate test. And I think we just love to see them in that environment and then make a decision from there.
Because I've always struggled that even with our team and rankings and things like that. Like, how do I handle that as a coach when, I don't know, TABC or TAPS has our team ranked somewhere? And Mike Neighbors had an interesting quote. He said, because the Arkansas women's team got ranked, and he said, rankings don't mean everything, but they don't mean nothing.
Yeah.
Like that. And I think that a little bit with the player too. Like, they don't mean everything, meaning if it says I'm top 100, well, all right, let's go, colleges, here I am. but also it doesn't mean nothing. Like, they mean something. So
agreed.
As for players, I mean, it's important to pay attention, but not to rise and fall with how that lines up. Because, I mean, I'm convinced that Coach Thomas at the Colony had a great relationship with Mike Kunstad at Texas Hoops. And that ranking used to be the only one, the Texas Hoops ranking. And I used to go to the Gassos where you'd get a number, a jersey, and you just play against other guys for 3 or 4 games, and they just sit there and evaluate you. And like, so I went to those enough, had a good relationship with my high school coach with that. I'm sure, Coach, if people saw me in the top 10 as a senior, they would have gone, Saman? Like, are you serious? But at the same time, like, I did the work and I went places, and my high school coach was able to say things about me. And so but that fly under the radar, it's like, how, with everything available now, like, how do people get missed? But I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, no, it happens. I mean, we have a kid right now at Collin that, this guy is an unbelievable player. Unbelievable. He came out of the South Texas region and played at a really big high school. Didn't get recruited by anybody coming out of high school. We ended up getting him. He's played 2 years for us as a freshman. He was first team all conference in our district, and had another great year this year. And he's getting recruited by a bunch of schools. So yeah, he was that. He's a great example of that kid that just kind of flew under the radar. But he's had Division I's crawling all over him all year. So how does a kid like that get missed? Right? It's just and you watch him play, you just go, man, this guy's a freak athlete. He's a great great shooter, can score it, can defend. Well, how did they miss on this guy? Right? So it happens, I think, more often than we think.
Yeah.
And I don't know the rhyme or reason to it. and to your point, right, those rankings do matter sometimes, right? And most of those kids deserve to be on those lists, but there are some that they just flat out miss that they're not on the list and they should be, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, we see that, and a lot of times, those are the guys we're going to get sometimes, right? That didn't make that list, but we go out and watch them play, and we're like, holy smokes, this guy's really, really good.
Yeah.
So.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Is your style of play based on just what you love and you can fit any player into it? Or do you change up your style of play based on the players you have? I think that that's a really unique question for high school coaches, just because for the most part, we don't get to choose the players that we have. Whoever shows up in the fall, that's who we roll with. And then you either make that choice of this is how we play regardless of who we have, but in college with the ability to, I like, let's just say, I love, everybody says they love playing fast, but I love playing fast. So when I recruit players, I want players to fit that. Where do you guys at Collin College sit? Is it a style of play that you love, that you try to find players, or best available, and then we'll adjust our style to what we have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's the latter, right? I think we're trying to get the best players we can, right? Because we're trying to find those under the radar Division I guys they missed out on, and we're trying to get those guys, right? So I think once we kind of assemble the pieces to the puzzle, I'll give you a great example. This year we changed our style of play game by game, right? Because of who we were playing. We had a 7-footer on the team this year, and he was fantastic. But there were some games where just because of the matchups, right, we had to change what we did offensively, and we had to change what we did defensively with him in the game or with him out of the game, right? So we change our style sometimes by the game. So, I mean, we have a general style that we played with, right? But I think to your point, right? Sagona's really good at that. And we sat down and said, this is how I think we can play based on the talent that we have. And you try to stick to that. But then sometimes, like I said, game to game, we made changes just because of the personnel that we were playing against.
I think that just shows probably how great of a coach he is and your whole staff, the ability to do that. I think it's still a growth area for me. Maybe a little bit of stubbornness, or just, not knowing what I don't know yet, but I think being willing to change and actually seeing, what I sometimes I think I could see, well, it'd probably be better if we did this, but am I too stubborn to make the change, or do I just flat out miss it? But in game, or that's pretty impressive to me, in game or game by game, making pretty drastic changes. But like you said, there's probably still some concepts that are fluid throughout, but that's still an area of the game where I got to improve.
It's hard, Coach, because so like personally, I hate playing zone. Right? I just hate it. I mean,
So you probably didn't like watching us play this year, because we sit in that 3-2, that 2-1-2. But I get it. Yeah.
No, but to that point, right? I'm not a huge zone guy, and like Sagona and I would get in these little chirpy conversations sometimes about it but he was right? Like sometimes we had to go zone because we just couldn't match up with some of the guys on their end man to man. I mean, we just couldn't guard them, right? They had guards that were really, really good, and sometimes we just couldn't stay in front. So we had to change what we were doing on the fly sometimes, or game by game. And I became more of a believer. I'm like, you know what? Especially with the shot clock, right? It's a different deal, right? So you have the luxury to kind of do those things because at some point they got to shoot the ball, right? They can't just hold it forever. So yeah, we made those adjustments on the fly, and it was eye-opening for me because I became more of a believer in the zone, because there's times to do it and there's times not to do it. I was just this stubborn old school guy that just hated playing zone, right? But Sagona kind of got me thinking more like, hey, we have to do this for these reasons. I'm like, hey, you're right. It makes sense. So
I get that. For majority of, with Coach Thomas, we were all man to man, and then most of college, and with Jeff, That name and Forrest, oh man, West we were until we started getting some pressing stuff later on with him. But that's how I came to faith is like we're a man-to-man team. We don't play zone. And, and I remember I asked, because we were even pressing a little bit. I had a buddy watching us play, and I said, what do you think of our defense? He's like, well, it just seems like you're trying to play a style that doesn't really fit your players. I was like, ouch, like that's defensively just didn't fit, pressing and trapping and trying to get the game going fast. And then, it's just hitting my head. I go for pressure man to pack line. Well, pack line slows us the whole game down. And all of a sudden we're playing in the 40s and 50s. And then it was just a random thing. I saw an assistant coach from Birdville, asked him what they were doing. And he said, man, we run this 3-2 zone that we can really do a lot of things out of. And I said, okay, will you send me some film? But like you, I was like, zone, like that. I can't do that. And watch the film of it. When you ever watch something and you're like, I don't really understand the rules. Like I can't really see what they're doing and why. But they seem to be covering a lot of area and space, and it's just difficult. I'm watching this team that they're playing the whole game just never look comfortable. And we went to it, and man, it's been pretty good to us over the years. And I like the idea for those guys that are still, anti-zone or anything, but just think about what we spend the most time on offensively is our man-to-man continuity, what we do against that, and our quick hitters, because every coach loves their 20-30 plays that work every time. So it's like I get to take that time of their season and practice that they've done and wad it up and throw it out. Like I tell our assistants, I don't want their playbook to be open to us. So we kind of close it. Now they can have a few things against our 3-2 prepared, but if they don't know the rules and the why, it's even harder. There's no defense that is bulletproof, but it has been a cool thing to see and a big change in my philosophy over the years.
Yeah. No doubt. It's it's not easy, but yeah, it was an eye opener for me because it really got me thinking more about, you really got to change on the fly, especially at our level. It's just teams are so good offensively, man. You got to come up with something to try to get stops, right? And you just got to change things up sometimes on the fly and then game by game. So
I'm always blown away by the guys that seem to know when to make the right change at the right time. Because sometimes you watch games and you're like, golly, that seemed to be really working. I wonder why they got away from that. But that it's what, in your opinion, like you're going through a game and you feel like defensively you got to make a change. Like what brings on that change? Is it like one bad possession, or is it when they start to get a string of possessions where they're really looking comfortable and looking confident? And then also like how long do you stay in that before maybe you get back to what you would consider your strength?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like for us, every game we typically would start off, even if we felt like we were at a disadvantage, right? We would start the game man, right? We would just say, hey, we're going to stick it in the ground and see how we fare tonight at the beginning of the game. And we just kind of pay close attention to the first 5-6 possessions, right? How that's going, right? Are we getting beat middle, right? Where our philosophy is keep everything on the sideline. We don't want anything to go middle, right? Which is most coaches. But, can we keep the guards in front? Are they getting penetration? Are they getting easy paint touches and kicks? When those things start to happen, the antennas go up, right? And we're like, and then if they go on a string of 4 or 5, 6, buckets in a row, we might switch to zone, right? So we just kind of play it. We usually would start man to man and then just kind of see how things went. And a lot of times it went, we'd switch it multiple times, right? And we would hedge on certain guys and we would switch on certain things, right? Just depending on the personnel. And sometimes it's a lot for the players to comprehend, and you get really mad because we'll say, hey, everybody's going to switch except for our guy, right? Only the big's going to, and then he ends up switching, and you want to scream, right? It's just those things. It's you work on it in practice, and they're just hard to implement sometimes in games. And as the game's going so fast, the players sometimes forget what the scheme is. And so anyway, it's just it's a chess match, right? And it's fun to watch Sagona because he's been doing it for a long time. He kind of knows when to make those adjustments and things like that. And I'll nudge him from time to time. Hey, let's go this or let's go that. And it was just kind of fun watching him make those adjustments during a game. So we
Yeah.
usually start man, and then we just kind of see how it goes, right?
The art of coaching, right? That just,
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch it a ton on TV, and you can read books. You can even have played at a high level, but the reps, the mistakes, learning from those over the years, I can't imagine just. Yeah, he's definitely playing chess. So I think a lot of guys probably feel like they're playing checkers against him. But another question for you. So I'm not surprised at all that you enjoy the recruiting process because you're a great relationship guy. We talked early on about how much you love the game, and like I would imagine you going on the road and sitting in a gym and watching players. Hard to call that work, right? Like I think you would that's how you feel. But with that relationship piece, I bet you're great with the players. So you talked about that one guy that kind of had, came from a successful program, had some downs to start the year, but then worked his way out. I think it's important for high school players or even high school coaches to hear that college players struggle with confidence too. Theirs can go up and down. Pro players too. And what do you do in those moments to help build their confidence if you see it drooping a little bit?
It's a great question, Coach. And I feel like, my role as an assistant coach, right, is to be there for the guys, right? I really, really, in my core, in my heart, in my soul, for me, it's about the kids, right? It's the whole reason I do this. It's one, I love basketball. And basketball changed my life. I could go in, I don't want to bore you to tears with my story, but it really did change my life, Coach. And everything to this day, from my relationship with God to my family to my job to everything that I've done in this life has started with basketball. And I really, maybe I'm crazy and I'm sick that way, but that's how I think. So because what it did for me personally is what I want to give back to kids and young men, because that's to me what it's all about. It's not even about basketball. I love the game, and I'm a gym rat. I want to recruit. I want to sit in the stands and find players. But more importantly, the kids that are in our program, whether it be my AAU program at Prestonwood or at Collin right now, I do this for the kids because it's my way of giving back. And I've never taken a dime to do any of this stuff. I don't ever want to. I do this because I'm passionate about the kids. So the relationships that I have with the players is why I do this. And when a kid's down, I feel like as an assistant coach, it's my job to pick them back up. And I try to do that daily, right? I try to pick 3 or 4 kids every day that need some extra special attention because I've noticed a pattern, right? I've noticed, hey, he's been down or he didn't play as many minutes as he wanted in the last 2 games. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell him he's the best thing since sliced bread because I do believe it, right? You got to do these things. You're going to get better. Just stick with it. Don't worry about it. So it's almost like good cop, bad cop sometimes with a head coach and an assistant coach, where sometimes I have to play a role of just making sure I'm keeping these guys' attitudes at an all-time high, right? Because it's a grind, like you said, and it's a long season, and there's ebbs and flows. And even at the college level, right, kids' confidence levels get crushed sometimes because they're not getting the minutes they want. I believe it's my job to be there for them, to put my arm around them and tell them I love them because I do. And we're going to go fix this problem, right? And even if it doesn't equate to minutes, just keep grinding because at some point it's going to pay off. And that's just how my brain works, man. And I feel like that's my role, right? It's my role is to be there for the kids.
I love what you said about the having the awareness of looking for those 3 to 4 in a practice. And I think Alex Sarama, with basketball immersion, and he coaches overseas too. Like, golly, coach, I had a talk like this. I've enjoyed this already. But if you've ever been on a call or talking with a coach where, man, you just feel like the dumbest guy in the world. Like I don't deserve. He's one of those guys. But he had a great point about actually being organized and intentional with what you just said. So he takes 3 or 4 guys. Assistant coaches take 3 or 4 guys, and it's their job to really be aware and conscious of what those guys are doing. Because, and I'm not saying it's not that way for you guys, but like if as a head coach, it's our job to do what you're doing as well. But like for me, if I just go into a practice, all right, my eyes are open to who is struggling or I may miss some guys.
or but I think as a staff, if you almost like divide and conquer, like, yeah, these are your three guys that I'm entrusting to you and that you really want to be conscious. I don't know. I think that may be for a high school program, maybe a way that what you're doing is right on the money, and we can do it in a way to where we don't miss anyone, or just maybe even be more intentional with it.
Yeah, I agree. And because for me, it's about building the guys up, right? It's about building them up because, especially at our level, right? They're all fighting for that next scholarship. And some point, we got to get them there, right? We want all of our sophomores to walk out of there with a full scholarship. And so, yeah, man, it's one of the things I really, really focus on. And I'll do little silly things like when I get home from practice, like and I've seen this, 30, 40 times this year where a kid was struggling, right? I go over there, and sometimes, I'm not the nicest guy sometimes, right, about this stuff, right? I'll kind of go at them a little personally and challenge them, like challenge their manhood a little bit, be like, hey, man, you're being a chump right now. You need to this. We can't have this, right? But something you got to know, and that's where it comes to, like, you got to know the players, right? You got to know their person, what makes them tick. Like, there's certain kids I can jump on them and really like kind of go at them personally, and other kids I can't do that with. You got to be more delicate, right? You got to use different words and different techniques. So I've seen a ton this year where, like, I would pick a kid out and be like, I'd go up and challenge him that practice, and all of a sudden he has this incredible practice, right? Because I challenge his manhood a little bit, right? And then all of a sudden he has this great practice. I'll make sure, man, when I get home that night at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I text him, right? I'm like, hey, man, dude, I'm so proud of you. Like, you had probably the best practice you've had all year. And I appreciate that so much because you took my challenge and you leveraged it today, man. Have a good night. Boom, that's it. And I'll get a text back from the kid being like, man, thanks, coach. And that's to me what it's all about, man. It's because, we had 13 guys in our program this year. All 13 of these guys can hoop. They're all good players.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when are they going to get their opportunity, right? So how do we get them? How do I help them personally make sure they get prepared so when coach calls their number in the game, they're overly ready, right? So it's not easy, man. It's hard, but I really do, man, really try to intentionally pick out kids that are struggling and build them up, and then make sure that we just keep moving forward.
And that's a great point, that we need to validate them. When we give correction, we're trying to push them to another level, and they do it.
Yes.
To acknowledge it and give them positive feedback. Because I think what happens a lot is we'll see a level of or improvement that they need to make. We'll give the correction, and that's it. Like, we don't ever circle back around, like that text you had at 9 or 10. Or we work a lot with footwork. I don't know a lot of coaches do, but footwork to me is especially because offensively, your footwork can take your athleticism to another level. And on the opposite is true. If you are athletic, but you have bad footwork, it can actually make you appear less athletic. And so footwork is huge. When I see somebody on a dribble pull-up stride into the wrong foot or the incorrect foot, I give that coaching. And then when they do it right, I just turned on, go to the next guy. Like, I mean, make a big deal of it, because, like, I think they're going to repeat those actions where they feel that sense of praise and encouragement from us. And so I think that's a great nugget that you shared.
You're right, coach. I think validation is key, man. Just letting them know they did something, positive, man, because it's such a long season, the ebbs and flows, and sometimes kids can get negative. So yeah, circling back and making sure that you say, hey, I recognize the fact that you did what coach asked you to do, and man, great job. It really, I think it really does help the kids, because they get beat down sometimes, especially for the kids that aren't getting the minutes. You know what I mean? That becomes really, really hard. So yeah, validation is just making sure they're staying ready. So when their number gets called, they're ready to go.
I want to hit the speed round because I know you, and a lot of people in this area do, but after the speed round, we're going to know you even better.
Uh-oh.
You ready? Quick questions. First thing that pops in your head.
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Coffee.
Nice. Greatest shooter of all time?
Steph Curry.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Greatest basketball movie of all time?
Hoosiers.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
I thought so. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
All right. What book would you give someone?
The Bible.
Boom. There's no book better than. All right.
The best book ever made.
Yeah. No one else has a chance there. In basketball, who is the GOAT?
MJ. Without a doubt. And anybody that wants to argue with me about that, I'm open. Call me on my cell phone. We can debate that.
Your favorite place to travel?
Hawaii.
Oh, mine too. That's
Best
it.
place ever, man. My family and I love that place. It's our favorite place.
It's the one place that when we get there, I feel like I'm home. And when we're about to leave, I physically feel sick that I'm leaving. Like, why? Like Jana and I, every time we're there, we see a high school and we go, I bet they need coaches there. I bet they need teachers there.
That's right.
Last one. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
I'm a 1 cup a day guy. 1 cup, sometimes 2, but usually 1.
Did you have
2 will upset my stomach. 1 gets me going. 2 kind of gets my stomach going. So
yeah. But you have the discipline and control to stick with 1, which is impressive.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Coach, man, this has been so much fun. So enjoyable just to get to talk hoops with you. Always have had so much respect for you and your family and just how much you love the game. I love this, man.
Well, Coach, this has been a pure pleasure. And I was, like I said, when you asked me to do it, man, you're the Baylor legend. I knew you were going to be a heck of a head coach one day. When I saw you do your first workout, I said, this dude's special, man. And you can even ask my kids. I told my kids that when you were the assistant at McKinney High and I watched one of your workouts, I came home and I told my son, I said, man, that guy's the real deal. He's going to be a heck of a head coach one day. And sure as anything, you turned out to be one of the best in the area, man. So when I got the opportunity to come speak with you, I'm dropping everything, man. So.
Well, Coach, I'm obviously going to delete all of that from no, but man, the feelings mutual there. Thank you for the good work that you're doing at Collin College and helping those guys out. And I think you're the real deal, man. So appreciate your time.
All right, Coach. Thanks. Have a blessed day, man. Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.